Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today on the 1st of April, getting spring kicked off right. I'm going to have a fun conversation today on what's traditionally known as April Fool's Day, but no fools on this call, that's for sure. We want to thank you for joining us. We're going to talk today about the 5 common myths, or 5 of the common myths of quality. You know, there's a lot of rumors and mistruths and half truths and distorted truths about quality out there. And sometimes it can be discouraging to people that may want to adopt it or get opposition to adopting it, or just don't understand why they should adopt it. So we're going to jump in on that. And we do believe, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that the truth is out there. And we're going to find it today together. So without further ado, let's jump in. I want to start off by setting the stage, who you're here to see and talk to. It's not me, I'm the face of AQAV today, but AQAV is a not-for-profit organization, and we are dedicated to improving the operational art of quality in design and installation across the AV, UC, and integration markets. This is our mission. We've got an amazing array of volunteers who fulfill this mission and contribute. And we've got a vast array of contributors to the knowledge base that this institution was built on. And those 3 words at the bottom of the screen there really do summarize what our mission statement is. And that's to improve quality through honor, education, and discipline. And all 3 of those are required in close to equal measure to get that done. So with that briefing done, I say, let's go. Have a little talk about these quality myths. Myth number 1 that we want to address. Quality has something to do with goodness or luxury or shininess or weight. The thought that something quality has to be incredibly expensive or luxurious or fancy, whichever word you'd like to describe it, that it can't be a very basic functional attribute. Well, I put this myth in quotation marks here because it does come from a very specific source. And you'll notice the 3 dots leading into it because I've truncated the statement to represent this first common myth. And the statement and the person that I quoted there is quite famous in the quality industry. And if we look at the complete quote and the concept behind the quote, we see this. The first erroneous assumption is that quality has these attributes. And that's from Philip Bayard Crosby, an amazing quality practitioner who initiated the Zero Defects program at the Martin Company and was a quality control manager of the Pershing missile program. He was credited over his career with a 25% reduction in the overall rejection rate of product and a 30% reduction in scrap costs. Definitely a pioneering expert in the technical field of quality. So even something simple and plain and fundamental can be delivered or ascribe and attain quality status. Quality is not limited to the top end of the expense spectrum or feature spectrum. It really does stand on its own face value. That one's busted. We know it's not true, but let's flesh it out a little bit further. Let's talk about how quality is defined by some of the greats who have talked about it. Let's talk about how AQAV ascribes to quality. Duran describes it very plainly. Quality is fitness for use. And I often like to talk about things that could be very close to their core purpose. And we think their core purpose is something, but there's actually some other attributes that are in the core purpose in order to achieve it. And if you've known me very long, I've probably used the analogy that that's kind of like a knife without a handle. Still very sharp, will definitely cut whatever it is you need to sever, not particularly pleasant or effective to use. Quality means conformance, not elegance. Again, building on that prior statement by Crosby. A quality vehicle will transport us from point A to point B safely and in a reliable manner. That's generally the goal of what we need to do with a vehicle if it's for purpose of transporting us. It doesn't have to have a fancy additional add-ons, expensive options like 8-track tapes or power windows. It just has to have the ability to achieve the goal of transporting us within the parameters we expect and describe. Quality, economy of effort or efficiency, and profits are different pronunciations of the same word in this theme. Now, that's not a terribly literal statement, but they are definitely different definitions of the same concept, and it's conceptual attributes that make it true. And that quotation comes from a wonderful mentor and our founding executive director at AQAV, Mario Maltese. AQAV really does define our understanding and goal of quality as conformance to requirements. That means we strive to make sure that we state and people applying our system of qualities state what the device function or attributes are, and that we can prove empirically through visible, tangible, recordable proof that we've met those requirements. Conformance to requirements. If I were to boil it down to an even simpler saying, I would say it does what it needs to do, what we promised it would do, and it meets your need. Very simple concepts, but quality has a nebulous understanding, and that's why we take the effort to define and review those things. Let's get on to myth number 2. Quality management is expensive. It costs way too much to do all of that stuff. We can't afford to do that. I mean, we can't afford to have $20 million machines testing $25 devices. That's just ludicrous. All of us have heard the excuses and the rationalizations against having a quality system. Well, absolutely, there's a balance point to be struck. But in reality, the real question is, can you afford not to have some level of quality management? Do you really want to stock your kitchen with knives without handles? You really want to drive the square-wheeled car? In most cases, the balance point is really easy to see for this. It's not terribly hard to discern and terribly difficult to decide upon. And to get to that rationalization for a quality management system and the level of detail and the requirements that are set forth within it, we have to ask ourselves, in our industry especially, AV integration and unified communication and the branch areas that we support there, but really in any industry, what are the true costs of things like doing the work twice because we didn't check it the first time, or didn't establish that the design was valid, or didn't understand what was required to deliver it? Very rarely is it less expensive to do it twice. What are the costs of the errors that can happen throughout the process? And these are far too long a list to talk about in any granularity. Errors compound and they build. And they can affect things outside of the specific device, system, or design we're working on. They can affect the human factor, the profit factor, and so many other things. What's the cost of the loss of a relationship between either a delivery partner, if you're an end user, or an end user or buyer, if you're a delivery partner? Or if you're in between those, suppliers, consultants, and all of the other moving parts that are required to bring together a project. Very easy to see, and I'm sure everyone here has seen these in real life, are the expediting charges. If we have to fly a rack across the country on 24 hours notice, it's probably 50 times greater than the cost of trucking it at a reasonable rate over a 2 or 3 week period with proper planning. We then have to fly a human to follow the rack because the rack wasn't designed or wasn't implemented properly, the cost begins to grow, both in terms of monetary impact and others. And the really big loss is the loss of trust. Trust is an intangible. It's built over time and it's eroded much more quickly than it's built, in my experience. Years and years of trust building and successes can be eradicated in a moment with a major failure and a loss of confidence. And last, and certainly far from least, is what is the cost of injury or life? The loss of those is incalculable. And our industry is not immune to these experiences. We've all probably seen the YouTube pictures of the tilted kilt with the dancing displays from the ceiling falling down and knocking the bottles off the bar back and people yucking it up and having a good time. And I think those were largely injury-free, that incident. But the incident in the Alabama airport was not. We had a young boy killed and another injured when this 300-pound display fell forward and crushed them while they were waiting to board a flight. Blame becomes irrelevant in an incident like this if we contributed at any level. Yes, there's an audit trail. There are people that didn't perform their tasks, and there are things that could have avoided it. But blame cannot bring back the life or undo the injury. It becomes a rather unimportant to most people monetary dispute or liability. The goal is to have the quality management system that will prevent loss of life and limb and to prevent this horrid impact on humans. Busted. We cannot believe that you can't afford a quality management approach at some level. Number 3, it adds too much work, too much time to do all that stuff. We got to respond to our customers. We got to get things done fast for them, and quality takes time. It's just too much. Well, not unlike money, there's a tipping point. I think it was Jerry Michalek, the fast draw champion for many, many years running in revolver sports, that said slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And to demonstrate this, sometimes when I'm doing in-person presentations, I'll hand out a couple lifesavers and a couple sharpened pencils. And I'll tell people, whoever can put that pencil through the center of that lifesaver fastest, with the lifesaver out at arm's length and the pencil at their side in their other hand, wins a prize. And what I see from that is a lot of people who stab themselves in the hands, a lot of people who break the lifesaver, and 1 or 2 people who will figure it out and do it in a reasonable speed with calculated accuracy. And although their motion may take a bit more time, the end result is often the first successful attempt. We have to calculate what the balance is between responsiveness. Another thing that I'll say a lot in day-to-day work and other places is, I understand your customer needs it fast and we want to be responsive. How fast can we fail to make them happy? I can fail tomorrow for you. I can fail this afternoon. I could fail right now by telling you something that's incorrect, but you'll have an answer very quick for your customer. Or we can wait 2 days, do the work, make sure it's right, and succeed for your customer. You just tell me what you need me to do. And sometimes that's a real wake-up call to people. When we look at the request for speed, the customer may be putting that in the forefront of the conversation, but it may actually be secondary to, hey, this thing's actually got to work. It's not more work in reality. And let's think about that. An effective quality management program, not an overbuilt, overloaded one, but an effective quality management program really doesn't add any steps. And people are rolling their eyes when I say this and talk to them in person. And I let their eyes roll because I know the truth behind this. And I know that if they listen a little longer, they'll come to find out themselves. An effective quality management system simply makes sure you do everything that's required to achieve the desired outcome. And that really does just mean that you're doing the things it takes. If we think back to that quality being something extra or more or over the top, this is a good example of it. You can have that car without the fancy 8-track player or the power windows and still get to work on time every day. And I always like to make this example, which people laugh at and say it's extreme, but the simplicity of the act juxtaposed with the incredible importance of the action that occurs because of it, to me makes a really, really good example. I like to say, just think how much money all the hospitals could save if they didn't make those doctors and nurses wash their hands before surgery. I mean, you could calculate the finite amount of water through the pipe. That's a cost. I see very expensive sterile soap there. That's got to be a lot more than the Irish Spring that I buy. Plus all that time for this high-end brain or thoracic surgeon and these highly trained nurses overworked already, standing at the sink, just running water and rubbing their hands together. Such a simple act, we could just cut that right out. But no one would say to do that because there is a cost of failure in every decision. And I like to talk to people too about the cost of failure. You know, sometimes the cost of failure is not so great that it requires an excess of action to overcome. If you don't dot every I and every T and measure to the millimeter where that ceiling screen or that table is going to set in the room, but in the field, they can make some micro adjustments confidently to get it down and be okay, that's a reasonable risk of failure. The cost to not go through all of that planning precision is very much offset by the in the field momentary decision that'll reach the same goal. The cost of failure for turning off that water 10 seconds earlier, or 20 seconds earlier than the National Health Institute and research centers for safely washing your hands before sticking them into a person's body is much, much higher than the cost of failure for sliding a screen or a table. And we have to account for that. Busted. We can't believe that this is true. The key is the balance point in an effective quality management program. We're ripping through these. We're going to have some time to talk at the end, and I love that. Myth number 4. And I want to send out props up there at the corner of the screen to the Mothman. I know I struggled putting the Mothman in here because I personally think there's some validity to that legend. I actually visited Point Pleasant, West Virginia earlier this year and had a coffee underneath the Mothman statue, but I digress. Myth number 4. We have a someone who does all of that at the end of the project. A Murray, a Mary, whoever it is. They take care of it so the other people can focus on the real work, right? Because that quality stuff is like finery, and we do that so we can say we do it and it's a pitch. Well, this is a big, big myth. And there's a lot of founding evidence behind it. We teach this in our courses in the Certified Quality Technician and the Certified Quality Designer. And Irene, please make a note on the score pad. I made my first shameless plug. This is a great place to start. If this is what you are moving to get it off the ground with a quality management program, checking everything at the end of the process or install or whatever it is good. It's better than nothing. It's better than plugging it in, turning it on. I see lights and I hear hiss, it must work. I'm out of here. It is a great place to start. But that's not the capital Q quality. We call that the little q quality. Adds value, but is not really getting us all we need to get. There's a better way. And when we discover things at the end of a project that's been months or weeks or years in design phase, expensive decisions made, architects, electricians, mechanical involved, manufacturers, hundreds or thousands of project engineering time put in. What happens? We get to the end of the project and we find that we were off on a dimension or didn't assume the length of run or some other impacting factor that we could have known very early, but didn't know until it jumped up and caused a stop. Some very simple things that it results in are delays on the site, delays in the decisioning, delays on the release to the customer, liabilities if there's performance language in the contract, or overrun, or injury, or underperformance. The list goes on and on and on. Could cost us expensive additions from our own pocket even. Loss of profit, loss of confidence, again. Disgruntled end users, never a good thing. How are we going to retain that customer and get the good reputation, word of mouth that we deserve, whether as a customer or as an integrator? The talking goes both ways. And sometimes it's an unrecoverable outcome. I was talking very recently with a seller, and we were telling stories of our career paths. And I think everybody that's been in the industry long enough to remember the giant screens and giant projectors has run into a situation where it just wouldn't fit in the elevator. And it's on the 60th floor. And by the way, you can't take it up the stairs because you can't make the turn out the fire door. And usually about 11 o'clock on a Friday night before the room's supposed to open end of next week, the project manager is on the phone calling crane companies and window companies, glaziers, because we're going to have to pop out some glass, fly that screen up on a crane, shove it through the window into the room, fix it all, and hope it works. And by the way, there might be a permit or two and maybe even a traffic closure involved in that. And I can tell you from experience, witnessing this, not that I've ever had it happen to me, I can tell you from experience that any one of those things, let alone all of them combined, cost more than a tall latte at Starbucks. Could be tens of thousands of dollars, egg on face, maybe even a showstopper if you're not allowed to remove a window or can't fly the screen into a location that gets it into the room. Simple, right? I mean, it's just a screen in the room. Nothing simple until it's done successfully. And this is a big one that we don't always think about. When we have to go back, when we have to delay in decision, when we have to modify mid-flight, you know, nothing worse than changing the landing gear at 50,000 feet. That has impacts across multiple organizations. If you're contracting for delivery, it impacts them. If you're an internal resource working on it, it impacts them. And then everything else in the schedule after that projected end date typically becomes impacted as well. It's slip. It impacts everything for a long time because we all know that we don't work sitting around waiting for the next job to come in. We try to optimize and maximize our calendars, as our customers do, to get things through in a reasonable and reasonably quick timeline. Busted. This just isn't true. One person is good, but they're not good enough, and they're not going to save you what you could save with the investment of not necessarily more people, but a system and training of the people you have. Now, I know I never thought that I'd bring grandma into my work life. She passed away when I was in 5th grade, a long time ago. And she was near and dear to me. And she was a simple woman. She was a stay-at-home mom, which is the hardest job of so many, a stay-at-home parent. She never worked in the outer world. She baked for a living. She baked and sold things on the street and at the church fair. And it was more about helping the community and providing a very tasty service than it was making money, but she loved it. And she was incredibly good at it. The woman could make a meringue on a pie that would hold a $50 and tasted delicious. And she had a saying, whenever I did something wrong and she was trying to gently correct me, and if I were very upset about it, if I had broken something or really just knew that I messed up, she would say this: "You can't unbake a cake, Bill." She called me Billy Joe, but we're going to leave that one out of here. You can't unbake a cake. Once you take those ingredients out of the box, you could reasonably put them back in the containers and seal it with some tape. But once it mixes and you add the milk and flour and water and eggs and you put it in the oven and you make it hot, if you miss an essential step or an essential ingredient, you can't get it back into the box and start again. It's a loss. Now, it may still taste okay, maybe not, but there's a lot more than just taste. You know, I could reasonably take the steering wheel off of my reliable little transport car with no 8-track tape and no power windows, and I could clamp on some pliers. I'd use, channel locks so they stay on there, and I could probably steer the car with that. But that's not really a quality decision. It has impacts on safety, usability, and aesthetics. So you can't unbake a cake. And I found these two examples that made me smile. Really simple, right? Folks working hard in the bakery. Cakes make people happy. We're celebrating things. They didn't have a very good scope of work from what I can see here. It doesn't look like they got the full intent, nor did they double check their work and get it across. But this made me smile. It made me think of Grandma. And I'd rather not unbake a cake. There's other things I like to do with them. We're already rushing into myth number 5, and this is a good one. We got a few expert people here. They're good at what they do. I mean, they're the best, right? They can figure it out and they can fix whatever the others missed, whatever they dropped, or whatever went wrong, and yeah, all right, I'll give you that. You're better off if you got a few people that are really, really, really good at what they do. They're going to pull along those that are not as experienced or not as diligent, and they're going to add some flavor of quality to the overall organization. Question I ask is, do you want to keep those incredibly talented and important people? Because without a quality plan, you probably won't keep them. There's a few reasons for that. Good or even great, more so with great employees, want to succeed. And when I say they want to succeed, I don't mean they just want themselves to succeed. They want to be part of successes. They want to see the wins and they want to see the positive outcomes. And they don't want to see it every once in a while like a lottery ticket. They want to see it with great regularity. I was talking with a very, very respected colleague of mine, and this came up. Nobody likes to see a loss, even when it's not theirs. And if we've got these great, talented employees being heroes every single day, they're not really heroes. They're tired, dissatisfied people. They're schmucks in a cape. They dress to wear the part. They definitely pull off the diving catch, amazing outcome, work all night to get it done effect. But that's not a hero. That's just a really, really unfun job if you do it every day. There's something I like to say about conversation and conflict in the workplace or outside. If one person's yelling in the room, it should probably require attention. Right or wrong? If everybody's yelling all the time, yelling is now the new talking. So we don't have a way to escalate or to draw attention to the fire in the corner or the standing on someone's toe, because it's all at a level that's unable to be differentiated. Repetitive failure, continuous underperformance, or even unclear improvement paths kills morale. Kills morale very, very quickly. And I know a story of probably going on 20, maybe 25 years ago now. I don't want to call anybody here less than young, where someone asked some really expert folks, a couple people that were renowned in the industry for quality even back then, well, what happens if I can't get my boss and my boss's boss and my organization to get on board this? Because I'm sitting here at this show and I'm looking at this and my heart's beating in my chest and I am standing up saluting this whole concept and I know it's going to work. But what if I can't get buy-in from the people who have the dollars and the decision point to make it happen? What do I do? And what those two folks told that young man was then, probably what's going to happen is you won't be there very long, because you can't unring a bell. You can't unsee that bright, even if very few instances of success. And when you see success and you taste success and it all comes together in a logical way that gets you to success without putting on that tatty old cape and self-sacrificing, you want more. And it's hard to stay in an environment of people and management that disagrees and doesn't enable that. Just being an expert at what you or they do, it doesn't make you or they an expert in quality management, you know? I like to say, I'm not a dentist. I'm not an expert in dentistry. I know some rudiments of it, but I couldn't go do complex dentistry or even a teeth cleaning because I'm not trained and I'm not an expert in that. But you know what? I've got teeth, so shouldn't I be? That's ludicrous, right? Quality management is a different area. It's a different way of thinking. It's not a terribly complex one, but it is organized, it is proofed, and it is itself continually improving. And something I encourage the folks on the call to take place in if they get engaged with AQAV. And I see some folks on the call who are. Every year we come together and we review this quality management system together. And every year somebody brings a gotcha or an oh my or a man, I didn't think of that. And it changes the face of the program and the standard. This is not wizened folks sitting on high in their ivory towers dictating quality. This is from the trenches. Here's what left a scar on my arm. And yes, it probably was someone using side cutters to trim a cable tie, but I don't want to get into that. Here's how I think we could prevent other scars like that. Look at this scar and don't get one like it. Do something else instead. And if we think about that morale, well, people start really rapidly. Why should I be the one to catch everything and fix everything? And they may do it for years, but sooner or later, they'll figure out that there's other places that maybe align to their way of thinking or hear their way of talking, and they'll go. Quality must be in the culture to be effective. And our esteemed founder, Mario Maltese, and one of the two Malteses that answered my question at that InfoComm over 20 years ago about what do I do if nobody else buys in, recently released an article about quality culture and what keeps people in a business. And it really is a combination of these things. Everyone has a point of salary, pay, reward, where it's just not worth it anymore. That's a hard limit to retaining employees. It's capped by what the business contribution is, but it's also capped by their I'll take less pay if I can have less pain. This quality culture, and I encourage you to read the article on the website, is how we build long-term committed career paths and dedicated colleagues, contributors, leaders, not just employees. Quality culture affects every level of the business, starting with increased output, predictability, profitability, and pleasure. Busted. So how do we kind of talk about how to apply this new knowledge we've all got, the myths we've busted today? How do we go forward and keep knocking down all these mistruths and whizzing stories of legends and things and why we shouldn't? Well, it's up to everybody. It's up to you. Let's talk about some success stories from the people who are buying a quality product or service. Well, you knock your competition out really quick. There's always going to be purchasers and situations that want to buy based on price, and you can compete in that market. It's a market, and I'm not even saying it's wrong, but it's a different market. The trunk slammers, the people who are, today we do Windows, tomorrow we do AV, those people are just knocked out because they can't deliver, compete, they can't speak intelligently, they can't prove their pedigree in the pre-sales process. I had to explain that term when I gave a similar presentation over in EMEA. What's a trunk slammer, mate? I think over there they called them bodgers and cowboys. Turnover of the project is nearly instantaneous. Punch lists generally really don't exist because we've gone through the punch list, we've punched the punch list and then punched it out. If it's there, it's usually something aesthetic, visual or insignificant or nebulous, and they really don't have much to do with the provider because they have validated with recorded evidence, empirical evidence, that they provided what they contracted with you for. That's really easy. In the business we're in AV, you see in this integration business and in most construction trades, it's the same with plumbers and architects, experience from that in all of them. How many of us have experienced we're done 5 o'clock Friday, right on time, the installers are out of there. And then when the system entitlement for ownership or warranty or managed services kicks in on Monday, the calls start coming in. Dispatch service, this doesn't work. Dispatch service overnight, that doesn't work. We got to fly a part in. It needed to be there and it isn't. Big news flash, that's not warranty. That's not break fix. That's not managed services. That's passing the buck and letting those poor folks on the help desk finish your work for you. It's epidemic in this industry and many others. And I believe it's not because people don't want to finish the job right. I really do believe in the best of the people. And if you show them how to do it and you give them the tools to do it, I really think that almost everybody is passionately going to do it right, go home and have a good sleep that night. It's the what they don't know, or they can't do because they've not been enabled to do, that causes this. Efficiency goes up. You can get more in because slip and calendar time goes down. And it makes everybody look good. I've heard more than one person in my professional career and in conversations with other professions say, I had to leave the XYZ company because my 20-year reputation meant more to me than the salary they were paying me. I couldn't do bad work conscientiously for any amount. Let's talk about the other end of that coin, other side of that coin, or the other end of that spectrum, the providers, the service and product providers. These are direct values, direct quotes. We didn't go out and poll. These are feedback from our members. 95% decrease in warranty hours. Well, that's because they spelled "we didn't finish it" hours with the word warranty. We just talked about that, and that's true. Stuff well built rarely breaks within the first day, week, month, or year. That's latent problems or even blatant with a B problems that people walked away from or didn't detect because they didn't have the state of the art to do it. 30% increase in capacity because they're not reworking, overworking, try working. Resounding customer satisfaction because they don't have to experience all this to get to where they want to go. The cost of delivery drops, so the companies make more money, and you end users, you know this, right? If you're good at what you do and you deliver on time and you don't eat it up with redeploys and free parts, they make better money. But then they can become more competitive in the market and lower the price to you while retaining a healthy margin and get a larger market share as a trusted advisor. There's no profit's not a dirty word. Everybody makes it. The customers that we do work for to make profit are doing something else usually to make profit. So it's no secret. And providers that perform well will embrace this concept at some level, AV 9000. Compliance, the ultimate level. The providers that say quality costs too much, or we can't do that, or we won't be competitive, they either really don't understand it well, or they're just not willing to do it. And that's a great differentiator in the market. So what will you do? What will you do moving forward? And this was the rest of the conversation with those two gentlemen and the young fellow they were talking to all those years ago. You got to start somewhere. And I heard very clearly, hey, your company may not do it, but you can. Every little act you do in your job, no matter how small or insignificant, you can think about it, be mindful, and deliver it with a quality approach. Any of that's good. The more you do, it's better. Doing it all is undoubtedly the best. You can be the change in what you do every day, and that sets an example. That gets attention. People who fail, people who are lazy, as few as there are, they get attention, but not nearly as much attention as the shining, successful subject. People are like, I don't know what they're doing, but I want to do that so I can get there. You can speak the truth about quality and process. In our loving 3 C's, you can speak it clearly, concisely, don't overblow it, completely. Make sure you cover the reasoning, and kindly. Very rarely have I seen people adopt better habits by demeaning them. We can be demanding, but not demeaning. We keep busting these myths and solving these mysteries as they come up. Take an evidence-based approach. That's really key. And some of y'all might have seen this floating around social media. It really did hit me because, you know, I know that I sometimes have trouble getting started. I sometimes feel dejected when I didn't get as far as I could in work and in life. Start somewhere, make progress. Even that 1% advance is better than nothing at all. And it may be the catalyst to a much greater success and change. But it won't be anything if it doesn't get a start. So that's what I'm seeing in the world today. That's where all the cobwebs are cleared for me, and my trusty flashlight has shone into the corners and solved all the mysteries. I really do want to thank everybody for coming out. We've got some time left today, and I'm happy to stay around and answer any questions that I know the answer to. And I know the answer to every question there is, folks, and this is another secret of quality. So the secret of quality is state facts and don't be shy. Prove your evidence. You could ask me anything and I can answer it, because I can say, I don't know. Let's go find out. That's a perfectly valid answer. Thanks again. Any questions, you can pop them in the chat, raise your hand. Irene's going to moderate that. We'll take them. The conversation doesn't stop here. We've got a great website. We've got a lot of good articles and collateral out there. We're doing classes all the time. We're going to continue to do these discussions on the web as well. Over to you, Irene.